Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Welcome everyone to the 5th edition of the TEDxUtrecht University. My name is Eleni Achete and I'm a second year student at the Utrecht University College Utrecht, studying politics with a keen interest in international development. I will be presenting tonight's event together with my co-host Paddy.
Thank you, Eleni. Hi, my name is Paddy Beale and I will be co-hosting tonight's event. I'm a second year economics student here at Utrecht University and I'm originally from the UK. TEDxUtrecht University is an independently organised TED event that aims to bring together our community in the spirit of ideas worth spreading. The hope for this event is that it becomes a local forum for ideas within the Utrecht University community that inspires people to change their lives, their futures, and ultimately the world around them. This year's event is based on the theme Thriving Through Turmoil.
Through this theme, we aim to spread the ideas that capture the essence of overcoming challenges, obstacles, or turmoil through the path of growth, progress, and success. In today's event, we will feature a series of 6 different TEDx speakers, ranging from professors to alumna and students, who will aim to present their unique ideas through their take on the theme. We also have 2 very entertaining performances from our very talented students. So, without further ado, let's introduce our very first TEDx speaker.
Our first speaker today is Professor Martijn Huismans. Martijn is an assistant professor at the Utrecht University School of Economics, who studies the EU from an economic and political perspective. He has completed his PhD in applied economics from KU Leuven, Belgium, and is currently a member of the Utrecht Young Academy. Martijn's love for economics, politics, and food will be combined today in his TEDx talk, Cheese, Love, and Understanding. So let's welcome Martijn Huismans.
I have a confession to make. We are in the Netherlands. My name, Martijn, is a Dutch classic, and I will be talking about cheese. So here's my confession. I'm not actually Dutch, I'm from Belgium. I do apologize, and I hope you'll forgive me. But in the spirit of cheese, love, and understanding, why would you not? Here's what I want to tell you today. To overcome obstacles, we need to come together. It's cheesy, I know. But really, yeah, that's my message. And to explain that to you, I'll be talking not, in some sort of romantic comedy, but about Europe's protected cheeses and their history. And that will prove my point that to overcome obstacles, we need to join forces and come together. The history of the blue cheese Roquefort is a case in point. In 79 after Christ, Pliny the Elder wrote that the cheese of Gaul has a strong taste, like that of medicine. A somewhat cryptic reference, and we will never actually know whether he was talking about Roquefort, but he's often claimed to do so. And that would mean that the historical record for Roquefort spans almost 2 millennia. So we'll never know that for sure, but what we do know for sure is that in 1411, King Charles VI gave the exclusive right of the name Roquefort to the united villagers of Roquefort-sur-Soulzon. Only they would be allowed to ripen the cheese in the caves below their village and use the name Roquefort. That makes Roquefort the oldest geographical indication in the world, a legally protected food name linked to a specific region. Incidentally, this King Charles VI was also the one who, in 1415, lost the Battle of Agincourt. But really, who cares about historical trivia when we're concerned with cheese here? So, in 1411, the exclusive right to the name Roquefort was given to the united villagers of Roquefort. And let me pause right there, because you may be wondering, why is an economist so positive about protectionism? Doesn't economics teach us that protectionism is bad? Well, in general, when we're talking about protection through import tariffs, for instance, then yes, economics would say that in general, protectionism is bad. But in the case of quality labels, there is actually something to be said for them. And to explain that, allow me to tell you about the market for lemons. No, I know, I'm sorry to be bringing those into a talk about cheese. But when life gives you cheese, you make lemons, right? Well, something along those lines. Anyway, the lemons that I'm talking about are not edible. They're cars, because in American slang, a lemon means a bad used car. So if you've bought a used car, and then after the fact you found out it's actually a bad car, then people will say you've bought a lemon. And so this is the story of a market for lemons that made the economist George Akerlof famous. And here's the gist of that argument. So suppose you want to buy a used car, and you see a car, but you're not quite sure how good it is. So you don't want to pay too much money for it. But on the other side of the market, potential sellers are seeing the low prices on the market, and then those with relatively good cars might prefer to not put them on the market after all. That means that the average quality is going to go down in the market, and then people are going to be willing to pay even less. So in the end, all high-quality cars will go from the market, and only the lemons, only the bad cars will remain, or the market might even disappear entirely. And so in agricultural markets, a similar story can justify protecting and certifying quality goods from specific regional origins. Consumers can then know what it is that they're buying. Roquefort is an example. When you buy Roquefort, you know that it comes from Roquefort. When you buy feta cheese in the EU, you know that you're getting the authentic Greek cheese made with sheep or goat's milk. And when you buy Gouda Holland, you know that you're getting Gouda made with Dutch milk. And so this idea in the EU of collective intellectual property is called geographical indication. So a legal protection for a good that is coming from a specific origin and using specific rules and specific raw materials. Now, okay, what's really the morals of this lemon story? Well, by certifying and protecting these goods, we can ensure their survival, ensure the survival of regional heritage, and a rich choice for consumers. And it's not bad, like protectionism through import tariffs, because it doesn't raise all prices, right? Those who want to buy a cheap blue cheese can, of course, still buy any old blue cheese that they want at a low price. But those who want to get the authentic Roquefort can perhaps pay a bit more, but then also be sure of what it is that they're getting. And the same for feta. Now, sounds great, right? But it gets even cheesier, because this system of geographical indications can not only help high-quality producers, protect regional heritage. No, it can also help overcome divisions. And for that, let me tell you about halloumi. So the historical record for halloumi cheese doesn't go quite as far back as for Roquefort. But it's still impressive because in 1554, an Italian book mentions a Cypriot cheese called halloumi. And since 1985, halloumi has been protected within Cyprus and requiring it to be made from sheep or goat's milk. Now, in 2014, the producers of halloumi requested EU-wide protection for their cheese. And normally that takes about a year, perhaps a year and a half, but in the case of halloumi, it took much longer. And this is because there was a geopolitical problem. In fact, since 1974, Cyprus has been divided in a Greek Cypriot south and a Turkish Cypriot north. Dividing the two is the green line. And it was said that the EU was withholding protection of halloumi as a carrot, as an incentive for Cypriot reunification. Now, unfortunately, that hasn't quite happened, but since April of this year, 21, halloumi has received protection from the EU. And it gets even better because not only halloumi is protected, no, also hellim, which is the Turkish word for halloumi. And the EU is going to make special provisions so that hellim can travel across the green line and be exported into the entire European market. So that means by coming together, the Greek Cypriot producers and the Turkish Cypriot producers were able to obtain protection for their prized agricultural products. Cheese, love, and understanding. By coming together, producers of quality foods can certify, protect them, protect regional heritage, and ensure a wide variety of choice for consumers. Isn't that great? Cheese, love, and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Martijn Huismans, for that amazing TEDx talk. I'm sure we could all use a bit of love, cheese, and understanding in our lives. Our next TEDx speaker is inspirational, determined, and extremely passionate. Mosca Hassanzai is an alumna from Utrecht University and is currently an Erasmus Medical Center PhD candidate. Mosca passionately advocates for a more inclusive society for people with a disability, where one can achieve their full potential regardless of individual circumstances. By starting small, she hopes to create a ripple effect. And today, in her TEDx talk, Standing Up Against Society's Assumptions, Mosca Hassanzai will challenge societal perceptions and expectations of people with disabilities. So let's welcome Mosca Hassanzai.
Why is walking considered the golden standard in our society? You may not be aware of this golden standard, but what I mean, for example, is that it would be seen as so inspirational if right now I got out of my wheelchair and took a couple of steps. People would applaud me and maybe it would even go viral. But why do we as a society so badly want to cure or fix disabilities? Because I'm not waiting around for science to heal me so that I can start living. Think about it. In order for me to take a couple of steps, I need to train for years and years, day and night in. Now, does this sound any fun to you? Wouldn't you rather have me redirect all this energy into just living my life? And if living my life to the fullest can be made possible by using a wheelchair or any other mobility aid, shouldn't we embrace that instead? So let's question the golden standard our society holds by stating this. If living a fulfilled life requires the ability to walk, then the opposite must be also true. So does it mean that everybody that walks is living a fulfilled life? I don't think so. You guys are just half of the time miserable while standing up, and I'm half of the time miserable while sitting down. So when you think of a person in a wheelchair, what picture do you paint in your mind? Do words like miserable, unfortunate, sad come up? If that's so, then I want to change your view. Because this view people have of disabled people is something that I'm made aware of on almost a daily basis. When I get into my car, when I go shopping or going out with friends. People come up to tell me I couldn't live like that or I couldn't do that. By saying this, they assume that my wheelchair is the worst thing that has happened to me. Well, rest assured, it's certainly not. By saying I couldn't live like that, and by not knowing anything else about me, in their mind they have already condemned me to a miserable life. So the seemingly innocent remark may not be ill-intended, it can be quite offensive. So another relating misconception is that a lot of people think that I'm constantly concerned with my wheelchair, when in fact the opposite is true. Most of the times I even forget that I'm in a wheelchair, until the elevator is broken, of course. The only time I'm really concerned with my wheelchair is at the airport. Most people can't wait to be reunited with their loved ones. I can't wait to be reunited with my wheelchair. Why? Because my wheelchair provides me the ability to move around and be independent. And now, don't tell me that I don't know any better or that I don't know what I'm missing out on. I'm missing out on waiting in the line, bad parking spaces, and getting my shoes dirty. No, but I know exactly what I'm missing out on. Trust me, I do have that much imagination. So, in short, walking is not something that I strive towards. However, I do strive towards living a happy life. So, let's talk more about these assumptions people make. Because of my visible disability, in general, people tend to make a lot of assumptions. And those can be very black and white. There is no gray area. Of course, I know that friend of yours in a wheelchair living in another city. No, I don't. It's not some exclusive club that we all join and pay membership for. And because I'm in a wheelchair, I must be paralyzed and I can't get out of my chair. And thus I sleep and bathe in my chair. Just to clarify, I don't. And some people, at the first glance, may assume I would not be capable of even attending school. But when I tell those people I finished my master's, I'm suddenly a Stephen Hawking to them. So, since early childhood, I've been dealing with these assumptions. And I think one of the underlying issues contributing to these assumptions is, of course, representation, or actually lack of representation. This is why these low expectations people have of disabled people is embedded in our society. From early on, I do have a strong intrinsic motivation to battle against these expectations. And I have to say, I do get myself in trouble for that. A couple of years ago, I chose to travel all by myself to the Philippines for an internship. This was something that I wanted to do, and with a lot of creativity, adaptive skills, and determination, this was a rewarding experience. This was also a turning point, because it reminded me to never deny a challenge, despite people trying to limit me, and to always push myself, figuratively and literally speaking. Of course, it's not all without difficulties. Sometimes my disability does stop me, or I have to work harder. You also get creative and you develop a lot of other skills. For example, when I'm doing groceries, I like to take my time, because I'm extremely bad at choosing what to have for dinner. But I cannot sit still anywhere in my chair without someone asking me every 30 seconds for help. In turn, this makes me feel very rushed. So I'm now conditioned to do my groceries A, super fast, B, or with headphones in, or C, in these times, I just do them online. So my message is, let's make the golden standard to live a fulfilled life, with or without a disability. And we as a society to try and facilitate that as much as possible. And we as a society are capable of doing that. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have shown all across the globe that we as humans are very adaptive. Countless measures have been put in place. Think of telecommunication, working from home, live streams, and crowd management. Coincidentally, these are also a lot of accessibility measures, which we all can benefit from. So, to have these options available is already a step towards inclusivity. So, if we put our mind to it, we can achieve so much more in this area. Speaking about our mind, let's change our mindset. Try not to make so many assumptions. I mean, don't expect me to be a lifeguard or a firefighter. You can cross that off the list. I don't mind. But try not to make so many assumptions, because the narrative society holds almost always doesn't fit. And let's re-evaluate the golden standard of walking. And step by step, we can hopefully make a change. And that change starts with changing our perceptions around disability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mosca, for that wonderfully inspiring talk. We hope Mosca's message was as impactful for you as it was for us. Instead of following with our next TEDx talk, it's time for a wonderful music performance by two of our talented students, Famke Seiner and Alessandro Frigo. Famke is a second-year Dutch student studying philosophy, politics and economics at Utrecht University. And Alessandro is a first-year Italian student also studying PPE. Today, they will be performing the song Dream a Little Dream of Me by the Mamas and the Papas. So please welcome Famke Seiner and Alessandro Frigo.
Stars shining bright above you, and night breezes seem to whisper, I love you, and birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty-night, then kiss me, and just hold me tight and tell me you miss me while I'm alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss. And I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear, just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you, sweet dreams that leave all worries far behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss. And I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear, just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you, sweet, sweet dreams that leave all worries far behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who doesn't love an all-time classic? Thank you, Famke and Alessandro, for the wonderful performance. Next up, we have our first student speaker, So-Yu Nang. So-Yu is an Erasmus Mundus scholar and visiting researcher at Utrecht Veterinary School. He studies infectious diseases and One Health and often talks about sex to break the taboo around sexual and reproductive health in Myanmar. Given the current political climate there, So-Yu is passionate to share his story and represent the story of many individuals like him back in Myanmar in his TEDx talk, The Joy of Doubt. So please, let's welcome So-Yu Nang.
Doubts. Why is the society where I grew up so scared to talk about doubts? Why is doubt constructed in such a negative way? Before I tell you why today, I want to invite all of you to think about a time you experienced doubts in your life. It could be doubts about your job, your relationship, your religion, even your identity. Let me bring you back in time. It's 1994, almost 27 years ago, when I was born and raised in Myanmar, which is also known as Burma. I grew up in the ordinary family and both of my parents worked for the government. So we did not have a lot of money and they sent me to public school in Myanmar. Looking back now, I have no idea how I survived the public education system. And I will tell you why. So when I was in primary school, I was asked to write an essay about myself. I remember I'm being very excited about, talking about my grandmother, my grandparents, and my brother, and also things I like to do in my free time. But my English teacher did not really have interest in my story. Instead, she provided the template that all of us have to memorize to write down exactly in the examination. So this is exactly what we have to write down. My name is Ao. My father is Ubar, a farmer. My mother is Doe, and a teacher. So even though myself was not about myself anymore, we have to follow exactly what the teacher told you to do and did not question a thing. So at the early age, I experienced a system in which we are not allowed to ask questions or even express ourselves very freely. In school, we have one objective, which is to pass the examination with the flying colors and to get the good grades. And they always tell you that good grades will get you into medical school. So as a product of public education system myself, after graduating from high school without really knowing what I wanted to do, I applied to medical college. I was very lucky that I got in. Everyone was so proud, they were so happy for me. Did I really want to go to medical school? Was it even my choice? But the point I'm trying to make here is that in Myanmar, we are not allowed to make choices. I knew many of my friends went to go to medical school just because of their parents. I knew some of them were not really interested in studying medicine, but they wanted to study art. And I know a lot of people who are so passionate talking about politics and philosophy. But I also understand why parents in Myanmar do not want their kids to study politics, because an interest in politics means a tough life in prison. Most Burmese were never ever given a chance to explore their passion or even have doubts about what they do in their life. It is even considered taboo to question. So we don't have a lot of options to choose from. We never talk about our passion or our interests. We talk mostly about getting a job or choosing acceptable professions such as doctors or engineer. So like every parent's dream of sending their kids to medical school, I decided to go there. You know why? Because I wanted to be a good son. I want them to be happy for me and proud. One day at least, I went to medical school for one day and I dropped out. So I was not a good son after all, am I? So after dropping out from medical school in Myanmar, I started preparing to study in the United States. I have full of self-doubts. The only thing I was good at following what the teacher told me to do and memorizing everything. So I sure had doubts in my capabilities, doubts in my choice, and doubts in myself. Combining a hard work with a prayer, I guess, I got into college in the US. Moving on, it's 2012, almost 10 years ago, when I moved to Indiana, which is in the United States. It's in the middle of nowhere. As you see in the picture, it's full of cornfields. The real problem started here. One fine evening, I was going to a nearby supermarket with one of my best friends. On our way back, I got mugged by two people, and they tried to rob me by punching me and trying to get everything I have, including my wallet and iPod. Here I was, the first time being in the United States at the age of 17, being attacked by two Americans. I was traumatized. The funny thing is that the first thing that came to my mind immediately was, wow, this is so different from what I have seen in Hollywood movies. Was it really worth it to leave everything behind? Most importantly, a safe environment I had back at home. So I started doubting more about whether leaving home or going to colleges in the United States was the right thing to do. I kind of regretted moving abroad at that time, but life moved on and so did my doubts. Another new doubt developed very quickly, and I'm sure this is all of you can relate to. How many times in your lifetime have you questioned your passions or belief? I can tell you I surely have many, many times. I did not know what my passion was, and I was not certain what major I should choose. So there is no teacher to tell me what to do, and I finally have a choice, which became a problem, ironically. So at that time, I already changed my mind from journalism to economics to sociology and computer science. Whenever I talk to my relative or friends at home, they always ask me, what are you studying? And I kept saying, undecided. So I knew that this is not the answer they wanted to hear, right? So I replied saying that, I was interested in studying human behavior, so I would probably pick psychology as my major. When you talk to Asian, the immediate response after hearing you studying psychology was that, are you gonna get a job? Well, and they got very upset with my uncertain thoughts. And they always told me to stick with one thing. Do not have doubts, no uncertainty. It is true when I think about it, people I know from home, my community, they never talk about doubts. So I guess I am one of the lucky ones to explore a few options, and I finally have discovered my passion for neuroscience. And I declare it as my major because science makes sense to me. Science is all about uncertainty at first, and we find scientific tools to discover an answer which will clear up our doubts. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But at the same time, science do not always answer your questions. So my doubtful journey continues. By the end of second year in college, I started to question about my belief in Buddhism. I'm a devoted Buddhist because of my society. Whenever I mention about my doubts in religion to my relative in the US, they always told me to stop being crazy and stop questioning. Here again, they do not want me to have doubts, and they want me to simply believe in it and move on. The more I study science, the more I question about my religion, particularly in the aspect of karma in terms of sexuality. Let me be clear here that what I'm saying here today do not truly represent the teaching of Buddha. These are just traditional beliefs. So many traditional people in Myanmar believe that homosexuality in the current life came from as a karma of committing sexual assault in previous life. Even today, many Christian churches are teaching that homosexual behavior is sinful. It is really extremely frustrating to believe in something like this without any proof or evidence. But I learned from my experience that it's okay to have doubts, and it's okay to question my belief. So why were we not allowed to have doubts in the society where I came from? I strongly believe that this is a result of living under military dictatorship for 50 years in Myanmar, where there was no freedom of speech nor expression. Many of Burmese people, many of us were never thought or even allowed to question about ourselves, our belief, our identity, and religion. If you have been following the news lately, many people in Myanmar are reliving under the nightmare of military junta since military staged the coup in February this year. So let alone self-doubts. Imagine many people go through the challenges when they start questioning about their self, their identity, and their religion in such an oppressive culture. Now I want you to take a moment to think about yourself or someone you know struggling with self-doubts, particularly doubts about identity. There are a group of people who are very close to my heart up until today, and I'm very honored to share some of their story here. After graduating from college, I got a job in HIV and clinical trial unit in the city of Philadelphia, which is also known as City of Brotherly Love. So in Philadelphia, for 3 years, I worked very closely with people living with HIV. I once met a 19-year-old African-American man along with his pregnant wife. Sadly, that day, the unborn child learned that his father was HIV positive, but not that his father had interest in men. Can you imagine how this young man go through his life hiding his own identity? Take a moment to think about it. I'm sure you have heard of a story like this before, of people who are never given a chance to explore their doubts or even live with their true identity. Imagine how this kind of story would go in my home country. Last year, I lost one of my friends to AIDS in Myanmar. I knew he was struggling with his sexuality, and I knew that his parents were very traditional and religious. Also, Myanmar, being the former British colonies, they have Section 377 of the Penal Code, which prohibit homosexual behavior. So it criminalizes the intercourse against the order of nature with the penalty of transportation for life up to 10 years imprisonment. So we are living under the law that can put you in jail for your identity, for your belief, or even the preference of whom you love. As a result, people forget their sexuality and hide their true identity. Yes. On the other hand, because of the stigma against sexually transmitted diseases, people do not seek treatment or prevention services. Sexuality doubts are costing life, and this is how I lost one of my friends. So remembering those alive or dead who are never given an opportunity to explore or even have doubts with their sexuality, I decided to become a sexual and reproductive health advocate in Myanmar. So this is a photo of my live talk talking about masturbation. So I became this masturbation guy in Myanmar, and here again, I was very doubtful how my parents were going to think of it, you know? They took it okay, so it was not too bad after all. So I mainly talk about HIV and sexually transmitted diseases, also focus on sexual orientation, and most importantly, reinforce the nature of the fluidity of sexuality and embracing sexual identity. So we cannot afford to lose more people over being true to themselves. To this day, I have known a lot of individuals who are struggling with their sexuality doubts. And I also want them to feel reassured that it is okay to explore their doubts and find joy in the process. So what I really want to say is that doubts are an unavoidable part of life experience. When the pandemic hit last year, we all see the nature of impermanence in life upfront. It is really terrifying. We all have doubts about if we are going to make it through our tough days. This pandemic has left us many lessons to learn, and for me, the biggest takeaway is, when in doubt, find joy in it. From thinking about what to cook for dinner, what to wear, moving to a new city, or having a new family, starting a family, doubts will always follow us. And certainty, that thing can be very intimidating. Here, I want to take a moment to recognize my privilege and the privilege many of you have to be able to acknowledge our doubts. I thrive through my doubts, and I'm extremely grateful that I'm given an opportunity to explore my doubts. Having doubts about my academic choices helped me find my niche. My beliefs about my religion are more well-defined than ever before. So I believe that finding joy in having doubts is a good practice. The most liberating thing in your life is being true to ourselves, living without any doubts. That feeling is so liberating and amazing, isn't it? But whenever you have doubts, remember that there's a joy in having doubts. Also remember that doubt is a window to welcome in many challenges and life experiences. If you are feeling a bit generous, please think of those who are never given a chance to even have doubts in their life. Without a doubt, I truly look forward to the day where people can express their doubts freely and live with their true identity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an important and informative talk, So Are You. It's clear that even in moments of doubt, we can certainly find joy. Our next speaker will be Tali Nikichuk, who is a student from Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and studies literature, linguistics, and psychology at the University College Roosevelt. Tali is passionate about community-based activities and initiatives, and is the current chair of the Common House Eliot Foundation. In her talk today, Kindness is a Choice, Tali will be drawing from her personal experiences after a mass shooting in her hometown. Please welcome Tali Nikichuk.
People tend to underestimate kindness. It's become somewhat of a cliche nowadays, appearing on t-shirts and social media hashtags as a way of promoting the message alongside your image. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, of course. But the question is, can people live up to making the world a kinder place? Do they understand exactly how pressing this need is? There's a common misconception that kindness is a quality or an attribute. But in reality, kindness should be a verb. There's nothing passive about being kind. Kindness is a choice, and it's one we must practice making. In fact, choosing kindness is the most valuable and courageous action there is, and I'll tell you why. I myself have "be kind" as my bio on social media, and I wear the phrase each day. I wear this necklace every day, and I have for the past few years of my life. It's a simple necklace, just a leather cord, little blue flower, with 2 words inscribed, "Be kind." But it's so much more than just a piece of jewelry to me. It's a piece of my story, a piece of my hometown, and a piece of my heart. It's a reminder of what's most important to me. And when other people see it, I hope it's a reminder of the importance of being kind. I grew up in a suburban New England town in the American state of Connecticut. It was gorgeous in the fall, but otherwise, quite a quiet place to grow up. I loved my primary school. I have so many nostalgic memories, from crafting misshapen clay figurines in art class, to naming the school's new turtle, who still welcomes visitors to the school today. When I attended school there, I learned everything from how to read to how to respect people. It was a magical place to me, and it felt like nothing could ever go wrong there. But on December 14th, 2012, my memories of Sandy Hook Elementary School were tainted. It became known as the site of one of the most gruesome acts of gun violence in American history. 20 first-grade children, most of them only 6 years old, and 6 educators were killed in a mass shooting that took everyone by surprise. Needless to say, my town was completely shattered as a result. Facing such a loss was devastating. It was hard to stomach the reality of what had happened, and it felt impossible to have faith in the world ever again. About a year later, I began really struggling, but I internalized my pain because I thought if I admitted what I was going through, I'd take away attention from people who would need it more. In a way, I was right, paradoxically, because I'm pretty sure everyone around me was feeling the same way. When there's a traumatic event of such large proportions, I feel like it's expected that communities will unite through their grief. But I found that grief was driving us apart. While my community attempted to pick up the pieces after the shooting, an organization called Ben's Bells came to town. It's the same organization that made my necklace. And its mission is to spread kindness. They make these handcrafted bells, and they hide them around town. And when you find one, it's yours to keep. It may not seem like much, but in those days, it was like finding a small miracle. In those days, we needed all the reminders we could get that there was still good out there in the world. It was these bells and a million other acts of kindness that helped my community get through. And it taught us that even seemingly insignificant acts can really make a difference. Soon, there was a revolution of kindness in my town. It wasn't uncommon to go pay for your coffee, only to find that the stranger in front of you already had it covered. There were new community initiatives to raise money for people in need or to donate to the local food bank. The people in my community fell in love with this concept of random acts of kindness, not only because we received so much joy out of benefiting from them, but also because we found that consciously deciding to perform kind acts was healing. The truth is, kindness is a choice. Sandy Hook may never fully heal from the shooting, but we've learned to look past our pain, our fear, and our anger to instead embrace generosity and compassion. And let me tell you, it feels impossible until it's done. This is true regardless of the circumstance. In everything we do, we can make a difference. The choice is there to pick kindness, whether it's paying for a stranger's coffee, forgiving a loved one, or simply doing something nice for yourself. Every day, we can choose to be kinder. Multiple studies have looked into the benefits of choosing kindness. For instance, kindness increases happiness. A 2006 study by Otake and their colleagues found an increase in subjective happiness of participants when they were asked to count their acts of kindness for a week. It also led to an increase in kindness and gratefulness. Rowland and Curry agreed in 2017, but they also found that this increase in happiness was not affected by the strength of the relationship between the giver and the receiver of the kind action, or whether it was to yourself, or even if you simply witnessed a kind act. Interestingly, 2018 study by Chancellor and their colleagues of a Spanish workplace revealed more about the nature of kindness. They divided their participants into 3 groups: givers, receivers, and control. Only the givers received instructions, and that was to perform 5 acts of kindness for the receivers over the course of 4 weeks. They found mutual benefits for both givers and receivers, including short-term benefits, such as an increase in competency and autonomy in the workplace, long-term benefits, such as increase in life satisfaction and happiness after 2 months. Sounds pretty great, right? But that's not the only thing they found. Another benefit was that they inspired others to act with kindness. Receivers paid forward their kind acts with 278% more kind and pro-social behavior than controls. 278%. That goes to show that kindness is contagious. One of the few times this year that contagion is actually a good thing. So, how can we remember to choose kindness? It's simple. Just like with any other skill, we must practice. According to Dr. David Hamilton, who writes extensively on the topic of kindness, our brains are already wired to be kind, but we can further rewire them when we make kindness a habit. Just like learning a new language or instrument, we can build new neural networks when we practice kindness. There are already many studies looking into how we can actively teach kindness and empathy to children, but people of any age can learn. And why take my word for it when you can test it out yourself by performing one act of kindness, whether it's getting someone flowers or simply writing a heartfelt thank you note. And psychology tells us that we should share our journey of practicing kindness with others because of something called the bandwagon effect. The bandwagon effect is the idea that people adopt certain styles, behaviors, and attitudes simply because everyone else is doing it. So while it may seem odd to publicize your acts of kindness, you're actually inspiring other people to join you, setting off a ripple effect. This is exactly the kind of ripple effect we need in our community. Whether it's because of the corona crisis, or because of politics, or because of more personal circumstances, there's a lot of pain in the world. If we want to have any hope to heal, we must actively practice kindness. After all, you never know how you could be changing the course of somebody's day. Each year, as the anniversary of the shooting approaches, my community takes part in an initiative called 26 Acts of Kindness as a way to lessen our pain. For the 26 days leading up to the anniversary, we consciously perform an act of kindness in name of one of the victims to honor them. Although December brings a lot of complex emotions to Sandy Hook, we consciously turn towards kindness. The truth is, kindness is courageous. It's difficult to find the good in the world, but to become the good in the world is true bravery, regardless of the circumstance. It shouldn't take a tragedy to learn how important it is to be kind. Try it yourself. Consciously perform one act of kindness in the coming week, and just see how it goes. I'd like to leave you with the motto of Sandy Hook Elementary School, something I grew up saying. Think you can, work hard, get smart, be kind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tally, for this moving story exploring the value of intentional kindness. We should all try and be kinder to one another, and this message is especially relevant when we are all collectively experiencing such a turbulent time. From one beautiful story to another, it's now time for a poetry recital by our very own talented poet, Razan Marcel. Razan is a second-year law student studying law, psychology, and linguistics, and she's originally from Lebanon and Egypt. She started writing poetry at the age of 7 and published her first poetry book by the age of 10. Now, Razan is currently working on her second poetry book that she hopes to publish very soon. Today, Razan will present the poem called The Layers by Stanley Kunert. So please, let's welcome Razan Mersal.
The Layers by Stanley Kunitz. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon, and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites over which scavenger angels wheel with heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face, yet I turn exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever it needs to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations has already been written. I am not done with my changes. Thank you.
Wow, that was a beautiful poem, and I think I can speak for all of us when I say that that was very moving. Our next speaker is Niels Kuntz, who is a third-year student of Philosophy, Politics and Economics, and is a former research fellow at the Center for Advanced Internet Studies. Niels is the co-founder of the NGO Next Generation Africa, which focuses on the research and implementation of digital libraries for secondary schools in Malawi. Niels is going to address the challenges of sustainable digital education projects in developing countries. Please welcome Niels for his talk, Creating Successful Digital Education Projects in Developing Countries.
Today, I want to introduce you to Davy. Davy is an ambitious young student from a small town in Malawi, a country in southern Africa. He is 15 years old and his parents are proud that his grades enabled him to get a good spot at the secondary school. But despite his good reputation, the school lacks essential educational resources, like books, maps, laboratory equipment. Even when there is a book available, it is often outdated and doesn't follow the new curriculum. Now, despite this, Davy's school is in possession of a fully equipped computer room, as it has been one of the very few privileged schools in Malawi to become part of a digital education initiative. Sadly, however, the 30 computers provide no help whatsoever, especially not in meeting the challenge of lacking educational resources. Since the project team is gone, there's no internet connection, some computers are full of viruses, and others are simply broken. No one knows how to fix them. All in all, they're pretty useless. In fact, they are just rotting in the school's computer lab. Now, in Davy's position, would you not also feel disappointed about such wasted potential? Surprisingly, this is a common pattern. To foster education, more and more organizations in developing countries make use of digitization. The industry is drastically growing. In fact, we live in a golden age of information and communication technologies for development, or for short, ICT4D. New technologies enable distance learning and drastically increase the accessibility of education for schools, universities, and training programs. And COVID, once and for all, has placed it on the agenda of every development organization. Whether for small NGOs or big aid agencies, digitizing their educational efforts has become a top priority. Yet, many of these projects still fail, some partially, many entirely. Like Davy's school, many schools in developing countries are still essentially turned into technology junkyards, some of them even with iPads. Whilst the planned benefits are often realized during the early phases of implementation, they tend to vanish in the long run. They often do not even outlive the pilot phase. This challenge uncovers a crucial gap between project's design, its intended benefits, and its so bitterly disappointing reality. Considering this chronic failure of ICT for development and the new wave of project launches triggered by COVID, today it is more important than ever to explore how we might be able to create successful digital education projects with enduring impact. So, what does a successful, sustainable digital education project look like? How can we close the gap between intended benefits and the actual outcome? The first time that I heard about the unused computer room at Davy's school, I was still a student in secondary school myself. My friend Fred and I were planning to visit Davy's school. Our schools were twin schools. During preparation, the teachers told us about the seemingly pointless computer room and its unused potential. They also told us about the lack of basic educational resources and the severely restricted access to the very expensive internet in Malawi. When we learned about these problems, we thought that installing offline digital libraries in their computer room might kill two birds with one stone: the lack of educational resources and the restricted internet access. This is why we developed an offline digital library laptop server through which teachers and students were able to access locally relevant educational materials. This first offline digital library and the overwhelming reactions of teachers and students, among them Davy, kicked off our engagement in this field. It built the basis for the NGO Next Generation Africa. Its founding goal was, and still is, not to create more junkyards, but to empower our fellow students in Malawi and to increase people's access to quality education. We thereby follow the idea that education projects should not be assessed as a snapshot. Rather, a project is successful if its intended benefits are sustained over time. Sustained as it advances from project design and implementation to being run autonomously by the schools. Our concept of success focuses on the impact, not the input. A successful project should not be judged by the numbers of iPads donated, but by the benefits they cause, also long after the project team is gone. Creating such successful projects, of course, is easier said than done. While in the research-rich developed world, implementing digital projects is comparatively easy, and projects in rural developing regions face numerous challenges. They include the weak infrastructure base, such as electricity and internet, the low digital literacy, as well as the lacking financial resources of the schools. Since such projects are also often undertaken by Western organizations, there can also be cultural clashes between the project initiators and the communities on site. So, how can we meet these challenges and design successful digital education projects? One thing is vital to remember here. Technology alone does not improve education. This does not mean that investing in clever technologies is of no avail. But these solutions need to center around the people using them, the teachers and students, their ways of working, studying, and interacting, the environment in which they do so, the local power structures, and most importantly, their perceived needs and challenges. These are the departure points of every successful digital education project. Technology can be an incredibly powerful tool, but it cannot substitute for schools' institutional and social capacity. Unfortunately, most projects in the field still seem to ignore this. They are supply-driven, looking for application opportunities for their products and agendas rather than shaping them in accordance with what schools actually need. Mario Murray, a leading researcher in the field of ICT4D, recently told me about such an example from South Africa. He described how a government department of education was offered a large donation of new devices from a big technology provider as part of its corporate social investment strategy. The government department happily accepted the donation and used the devices for its digital education efforts. But there's a problem with such gifts. The technology provided is often not the technology that people are used to, and repairing them is often not affordable for the schools, and spare parts are rarely available. So the project created junkyards again. This example perfectly illustrates how supply-driven projects are doomed to fail. ICT for education initiatives should instead be designed to the needs of students and teachers. Better suited solutions are more sustainable solutions. This also shifts the initiatives from being supply-driven towards being more demand-driven. How can we best achieve this? Above all, involve the communities in the design process. ICT for education initiatives should not only try to understand the people and their challenges on site, but should be realized and modified by them. Think of it as a bottom-up approach, rather than a conventional top-down management approach. In line with this, digital education projects should rely on participatory design processes, which involve the communities from the very beginning. This is also a core principle for our work at Next Generation Africa. Whilst reworking our digital library interface recently, for example, we conducted a large number of interviews with the schools and even the communities around them. Teachers might not be able to program the interface, but their input was crucial to develop an educational environment that is intuitive and accessible for everyone, even for those who have never used a computer before. In this picture, you can see, you can get an idea of the new digital library interface and how it is tested by a student. Being part of the development process does not only help to shape better suited solutions, it also helps to embed the projects into the community, for everyone at the schools to profit. Addressing the challenge of computer literacy is another vital step. For our project schools, we developed a comprehensive program of workshops, user guides, tutorials, and training sessions. For this, we also cooperated with the Malawian University. Let me quickly tell you about one success story. It's about Miss Kanyika, who's a geography teacher. She used to take 2 pieces of chalk and let one circle around the other when she explained the solar system to her students. Effective, but still not very descriptive. This is why she was so excited about the opportunities that the digital library offered her. She spotted the chance to convey abstract concepts more vividly. Unfortunately, she had not a lot of prior experience with using computers. This is why almost every day she took chance of the workshops and came to the computer room to practice with us. From the many images, simulation, articles, videos, and pictures that the digital library provided, she selected the best one and used them for her class presentations. Not only Ms. Kanyika was excited about the new possibilities that her skills offered her, her students loved it as well. The road towards sustained impact, however, does not end there. For schools to be able to run and maintain digital education projects in the long run, we also need to address the challenge of limited financial resources. To ensure financial sustainability, it becomes crucial to ensure long-term funding and the use of appropriate technology, which is best sourced and maintained locally. The present norm of short-term funding in ICT4D is insufficient. The current strategies of most of these projects, in which resources flow from Western-based organizations to communities in rural developing regions, also deepens resource dependencies. The computer room in Davies School is a prime example of this. The broken computers could not be repaired without external help. Successful digital education projects need to be designed to become financially sustainable, considering hidden running and maintenance cost. Addressing long-term funding also helps removing external dependencies. The projects of Next Generation Africa are geared towards being run, maintained, and even expanded by people at and around the schools. For this, we heavily rely on our partnerships with schools, education authorities, and local organizations. At each school, for example, there's one teacher responsible for administrating the project, the Digital Library Champion. These champions function as organizers, problem solvers, leaders, trainers, and contact persons for their colleagues and students. Transferring the project into the hands of the schools also helps to spark innovation. At one school, for example, teachers, inspired by the digital library and the possibilities of digitization, started to create video lessons. They have created several hundred videos by now. These videos are uploaded to the digital libraries, they are shown in local community education cinemas, and they are circulated on USB sticks via minibuses. Davy, I hope you still remember him, is another prime example of how our project is taken over by people in Malawi. He is actually about to turn 21, and 2 years ago he graduated from our very first digital library project school. He was so excited about the project and how it helped him in preparing for his exams that he decided to reach out to us. Today, he's doing workshops himself, teaching people how to use computers in the digital library for their education and classes. He brings the digital library to new schools and empowers students by doing so. I'm so happy that just recently, Davy was joined by 2 further colleagues, 2 young women who are also coming from a project school with digital library. This is one more step towards our goal of fully transferring the project into the hands of people in Malawi. Now, digital development and education projects are quickly picking up pace, and the momentum keeps building. Especially during the COVID crisis, many ideas have been raised for how to use digital means as remedies to these extraordinary challenges. It is therefore exactly the right moment to stop and reflect about how these projects are being undertaken. Are they actually centering around the people using them? Are they involved? Do they involve the communities in the design process? Are they financially sustainable and geared towards being run autonomously by the schools? Do they empower people and do they convey digital literacy? Let us think about these questions so that this imminent wave of ICT for development and education projects will not just seep away into the sand, but actually have a lasting impact, so that it will bring about a better future for the next generations in Malawi, in Africa, and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels, for the great talk. You really highlighted how we can use digital education and make it accessible to all in an era where we've discovered how important remote learning can be. I've definitely come to appreciate the unique challenges that disadvantaged communities faced through your talk. Our next speaker is Francesca Bass, who is studying psychology and sociology at the University College Utrecht. She originally comes from Bologna, Italy, but grew up in Portland, Oregon, in the US. Francesca has been passionate about mental health for many years and has been organizing events such as We the Wild Youth and securing awards such as that of Oregon's Mental Health Heroes in 2019. She aspires to become a therapist in eating disorders and will give you a glimpse of her journey through her talk. Life after anorexia. You are not your disorder. So please, let's welcome Francesca Bass.
Welcome, everyone. I want to start my talk today by taking something off your chest. You see this chair? It's for you. I want each of us to put something on this chair. I'll start. That said, the name that I gave my eating disorder, the most self-limiting, lethal voice to ever live in my mind. I want you to do the same. Visualize your inner voice. Maybe it's an eating disorder, maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's a self-limiting belief. Whatever that voice is for you, I want you to give it a name and send it over. Don't worry, it'll still be here when we're done. This simple act is not only why I am here today, but the foundation of my recovery. So often we feel our biggest struggles, our biggest fears, are a synonym for who we are. I was the anorexic. Maybe you were the perfectionist and you were the addict. When we give these voices the power to veil over our identity, they will spread like ivy, intrusively wrapping around every part of our life. How can you ever expect to heal these voices if you give them the power to take over you? You can't. But here's the good news. You are not defined by your ed. Although these voices are loud, they are not you. Now that you know who you are and who your ed is, you can choose who to listen to. But of course, it's not so simple. Healing is not linear and it does not come with a step-to-step manual. In fact, it's more like a roller coaster, with high highs and low lows, but strap on tight, honey, because going on this roller coaster is the best decision you can make. Let me tell you about my healing roller coaster. Ed first came knocking at my door at the age of 15. I was in a place in my life where I felt completely out of control. And so I thought, why not take control of the one thing that I can? My body. It started with health kicks, trying to work out and pay attention to what I was eating until one day I skipped a workout. A little voice crept in, carrying with it so much shame, so much guilt. This little voice kept growing louder and louder until the mental punishments would no longer suffice. I started to purge. First once a week, twice, 3 times every day. Eventually my throat was in so much pain I could barely speak. For those of you who know me, you know how much I love to talk, so this was a big problem. I couldn't continue, but I also couldn't stop. This illusion of control felt so good. What do I do now? This little voice quickly came up with solutions, rules, and I listened. No eating before 11 or after 8. Go to the gym every day. Don't eat out with people. Don't eat unless you have to. Ed's rules became increasingly more difficult, and every time I followed, I'd be left drowning in an ocean of shame and guilt, suffocating. You're probably wondering, why was I listening to Ed if it brought me so much hurt? You see, Ed brought me control, safety. And this little voice turned into a problem-solving vessel for everything. When I was sad, when I hated my body, when the people in my life hurt me, Ed was always there to numb the pain. It worked. I became numb. But I didn't just become numb to pain. I became numb to joy, to love, to happiness, all fading into distant memories. This all sounds so sad to me now, but in the moment, I was convinced that I was thriving. I had it all sorted out. Eating disorders bombard you with their ideals until you believe these ideals to be yours. I truly believe my worth lied in the gap between my thighs and starving myself. When I was able to achieve these things, I felt like the epitome of control, joy, happiness. When you think you feel such bliss, why would you even consider letting go? Eventually, my body started feeling the consequences. My periods were the first to go, followed by my energy, my warmth, my hair, my heartbeat beating at just 42 beats per minute. But I was numb. Ed would justify all these symptoms and tell me to keep going. I was living behind bars, thinking it was a castle, succumbing to Ed's every rule. Ed decided to make one last rule. Don't eat, period. I tried with all of me to commit to this rule, but I couldn't. One day I ate, and a switch flipped in me, going into survival mode, and so I ate and ate and ate until I physically could not fit another bite. I then leaned over the toilet, crying from Ed's screams. When I was done, I opened my eyes to see red. That was the first time Ed made me feel unsafe. I was so scared, I knew I had to tell someone. The next day, I worked up the courage and told my mom. Man, was it scary. My mom, having suffered from an eating disorder herself, decided to take me to the doctor. The doctor then took some vitals and told us they'd get back to us with just a few days. That same day, we went to go see an outpatient treatment. This is 5 days a week, 7 hours per day, and it seemed that would be the plan. I'd start in just a few days. That same day, we received a call from this clinic. We received your daughter's vitals. We cannot take her. She is too sick and needs a higher level of care. What? I felt I was dreaming. I was fine. Eating disorders are not a choice. They mask over everything. I was dying and didn't even know I was sick. I was admitted into a residential facility where I stayed very shortly. Their methods did not work for me. After I left this clinic was when my true healing began. I met my angel, my therapist, Amanda. She helped me identify Ed and put him on a chair. She looked at me and said, all these voices, these self-sabotaging thoughts, they are not you, they're your Ed. I felt liberated. For the first time, I felt someone was looking at me like Francesca, not anorexia. She then asked me a question. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? I went on to tell her about my dream life, full of success, friends, travel, and an amazing career. She looked at me and said, that life is amazing. That life is waiting for you. But do you think you can achieve that life with Ed by your side? No, I can't. I broke down. Through this incredibly difficult therapy session, I began to find my desire to recover and my whys. I want to see the world. I want energy. I want to be healthy. I want freedom. I want to be a good friend. I want to enjoy food. And so we began my healing journey and my divorce to Ed. I made sure to give him back everything that was his clothes, his want for my smallness, his treasured shame, all of it. So now, what can you do about your Ed? I want you to look at your Ed. Ask him, why is he there? To try and help you find control, to keep you safe, to protect you from a traumatic past. Have a conversation with your Ed. Hear him, but let him know his methods are no longer serving you. Give him back what's his and put all that energy Ed has into something which will benefit. Which seeds do you want to plant and nourish in your mind? I started to heal, but was at a point now where I despised my body and my mind. I struggled to find anything that I liked about myself. My body image became my biggest trigger. My appearance wasn't what started my eating disorder, but became the biggest justification Ed would use to make sure I stayed. Ed had not only distorted my mind, but my vision too. The truth is, it didn't matter what I weighed. Ed was never pleased. My body became so unsafe. It makes sense my shape is what Ed clinged on to because it is consistently supported by the outside world. We are consistently told how we should look, what we should eat, preach not to take up too much space. Bodies have started to trend. This is ridiculous. Music, clothes, slang should be trends, but bodies? No. The diet industry is a $360 billion industry, growing off our insecurities, daily grooming us to not only unachievable ideals, but to believe that our body is the most interesting thing about us. But your body, it's the least important thing about you. Beauty lies in the way you light up about your passions, the way your body uniquely moves, the sunshine you radiate with each smile. Beauty cannot be quantified by a number. But of course, this was a very hard thing for my Ed to understand, and so I took a different route. I was introduced to a concept called body neutrality. This notion shifted the way I saw my body. Body neutrality is a concept of loving your body for what it does for you rather than how it looks. So loving your arms because they allow you to hug ones you love, your eyes for helping you see, your stomach for carrying all your organs safely. Body neutrality kept me on the road to recovery and set a foundation to love my body forever. This idea helped me respect and accept my body. And understanding how much influence a diet culture has made me realize that my body image was stored in my brain cells, not my fat cells. Body neutrality is a beautiful foundation. However, I believe celebrating your body's external too is also so valuable. But I didn't know how to do this. This is where I introduced a concept I like to call full body love. Full body love is built upon a foundation of body neutrality and pushes you to celebrate your body's external too. Full body love does not mean waking up every day and loving every inch of what you see. It's the day you wake up and realize you've stopped apologizing for your body, the space you take. It's knowing your worth even on days you feel horrible. Accepting and respecting your body's uniqueness. Practicing this is different every day. Some days I wake up and feel safer in a more body neutral stance, but other days I look in the mirror and go, damn, I look good. At first, of course, I didn't fully believe the words coming out of my mouth, but the more I practiced this every day, the more these words turned into reality. Since practicing full body love, my confidence has risen so much, and my biggest ed trigger obliviated. We have to start bringing more awareness to the devastation the diet culture brings and mental illness which it inevitably boosts. 53% of American girls are unhappy with their bodies. This grows to 78% by the time these girls reach 17. 1 in every 4 dieters will gain an eating disorder. This is unacceptable. Currently, eating disorders are the most lethal mental illness, killing 1 in every 10 people diagnosed. If you are struggling, please remember, you are not your disorder. Now that you know who is you and who is your ed, you can choose who to listen to. But remember, healing is not one big choice. It's a choice you must make every single day. The more you choose yourself, the more you choose recovery, the closer healing becomes. If you know someone struggling with an eating disorder, please be okay with not fully understanding. Eating disorders are not logical. The best thing you can do for someone struggling is make them feel heard. Support them and encourage them to find a team which will help them do so. And remember, eating disorders do not discriminate against numbers. Only 6% of people struggling with an eating disorder are clinically underweight. Eating disorders come in all shapes and sizes, but no one is less devastating. I want to leave you with one last thought. A little recap. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you actively engage in something, it becomes easier to do because your neural circuits become stronger, rewiring not just your mind, but your brain. Think about if you've ever played an instrument. The more you practice, the easier and more natural it gets. Healing is the same. The more you practice, the easier and more natural it gets. But just like playing, you can't just pick up and play. You have to learn to read notes, learn how to rest your hands on the instrument, count beats. Altogether, all these things combined will lead you to playing. Healing is like playing an instrument. You have to tie all the pieces together, distinguishing yourself from your ed, finding your whys, finding full body love, and practicing every single day. It may sound messy at first. You will squeak and you will miss beats, but be gentle on yourself. Missing one beat does not mean you are back to square one. It's just that, one beat. By the end, you will be playing the most beautiful symphony that has been heard. I can't wait to hear your symphony. Thank you.
What a moving speech. I loved the message about body positivity, and I think we can all use the message that we are not our limiting beliefs. Before we end our event, I'd like to call onto stage Saima Maisha, the chair of TEDxUtrecht University, and Elias Fazal, the co-chair, for their closing remarks. Saima is a second-year Bangladeshi student enrolled in the Philosophy, Politics and Economics program, and Elias is also a second-year PPE student from the United Kingdom. So please welcome Saima and Elias to give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Eleni and Patty. After a challenging 1.5 years of dedication to organize this TEDx event, we have finally made it. The demanding yet persistent and resilient journey has been our inspiration behind the theme, Thriving Through Turmoil.
And today, TEDxUtrecht University sought to celebrate each one of our stories and ideas of thriving through turmoil, for those on stage and for those at home.
Talking about people behind the screen, we would now like to acknowledge the individuals without whom this event would not have been possible. Starting with our team, the head of speakers, Rumer van Wyk, the head of production, Hao-Yu Wang, the head of audience, Willem Brecher, the head of public relations, Natalia Jogolski, the head of set design, Ava Mack, and lastly, the head of finance, Koen Willeman.
We would also like to thank the following UU staff for their endearing support: Hans Skerman, Sabine Wolfert, Anne Hamburger, Hanneke Olivier, Monique Maurits, Robin Van Broel, and our external partner Lisa Hassan from Lisa's Brushes for the beautiful paintings for our event. As we close the 5th edition of TEDxUtrecht University, we hope this event continues to provide a platform to those who inspire and to those who wish to be inspired. Thank you to those who have tuned in to watch our event. We hope you thoroughly enjoyed it from your couches.
We will now proceed to our Zoom Q&A session, where you will get the chance to ask questions and interact with our speakers. The Zoom link can be found on our website, social media pages, and in the description box below. Thank you once again for being with us today. Signing off on behalf of TEDxUtrecht University 2021.